Okay, we want to take you overseas where the big question this morning is, was North Korea the victim of a cyber attack? The country is partly back online after a major internet outage that lasted for hours. An American firm that monitors internet activity says North Korea went offline after instability over the weekend. And it was just days earlier President Obama warned of a proportional response after the U.S. concluded North Korea was behind the massive Sony hack. 2 U.S. officials have denied any U.S. role, but the State Department would not confirm or deny the U.S. was behind this outage. Look.
As the President said, we are considering a range of options in response. We aren't going to discuss, publicly operational details about the possible response options or comment on those kind of reports in any way, except to say that as we implement our responses, some will be seen, some may not be seen. So I can't confirm those reports, but in general, that's what the President has spoken to.
So North Korea once again denied being responsible for the Sony hack and in a statement said as such, but praised whoever is responsible. The country also criticized President Obama, hinted at an unspecified attack. And China's foreign minister condemned cyber attacks in general, but stopped short of singling out North Korea. Here with us now from Washington, the CIA's former director for its Korea branch, Bruce Klingner. Bruce, it's great to have you with us, and certainly a lot of questions on the back end now that we're getting the details that North Korea and its internet went dark over the weekend. What do you know about the U.S.'s role? We have the State Department giving a non-statement there about what the U.S. role was. What's your gut say?
Well, we don't know the U.S. role, and the State Department spokesperson was being a bit coy as if trying to claim some credit. If it was a U.S. cyber attack, apparently it wasn't very successful because North Korea seems to be back online. Of course, there's not a very big internet connectivity between North Korea and the outside world. That's reserved for the elites. There's an intranet but even that is very limited exposure to North Korean citizens.
Sarah, it seems like the Sony hack, obviously a lot of business ripples, but the chapters in this script continue to write itself. And now we see what's happening with potentially this proportional response and maybe a warning shot across the bow to North Korea from the U.S.
I think a horror film was how the New York Times called it, that Sony is living through more than anything it could make in the movies. My question, Bruce, to you is what is a proportional response, given the fact that this is a whole new situation for the United States, cyber warfare, cyber vandalism, whatever you want to call it. How does the U.S. fight this, especially coming from North Korea, where to some it's very surprising the capabilities they've had here with Sony?
Right. People who focus on North Korea have known for years about this Unit 121 as well as other cyber units that the North Korean military and security services have. But this is the largest cyber attack from North Korea. They've been linked to previous ones in the past. But the U.S., there's a number of things we can do. Particularly on this cyber attack, it seems to fulfill the legal requirements for putting North Korea back on the state sponsors of terrorism list. We took them off in 2008 in an attempt to keep the nuclear negotiations going, but that didn't work. And there's also a lot of other U.S. Punitive measures or targeted financial measures that we can do. It surprises a lot of people that we've applied stronger sanctions to Iran, Burma, Syria, even Zimbabwe than we have to North Korea. So there's other issues or other measures we can take.
The North Koreans have said that if we were to retaliate, they would respond with 1,000 times more punishment, or whatever the phrase was they used. Do you take that as a credible threat? What are their additional abilities to attack us, either cyber-wise or commercially or in other ways?
Right. That's sort of standard North Korean rhetoric, but we can't be blasé. We've seen in the past, as recently as 2010, they conducted 2 acts of war, 2 armed attacks against South Korea. They've done terrorist attacks in the past, but no one's expecting a nuclear Christmas package from North Korea to come through our window this week. But we do have to be vigilant. I think the biggest threat will be continued cyber attacks, but also what we're seeing now is with North Korea ratcheting up not only the cyber attack, but its rhetoric about this, as well as the UN Security Council discussing North Korea's crimes against humanity, that I think North Korea's charm offensive is over. They've been relatively quiet since last April when they threatened nuclear annihilation against the U.S. and its allies. That seems to be over. They're ratcheting up the tension. They're ratcheting up the rhetoric. And as we go into March and April of next year, an annual combined U.S.-South Korean military exercise, that's when North Korea really really tends to ratchet up rhetoric even more and even start moving military units around.
And Gene Robinson, Bruce makes a great point there when it comes to North Korea drawing such attention to itself, obviously through something as silly as potentially the film release of The Interview, but to the serious issue of the human rights abuses that take place in North Korea.
Which are beyond appalling and phantasmagoric in their nature. Bruce, my question is to North Korea watchers: is the consensus that Kim Jong-un is in materially crazier and more unstable than his father was as North Korean leader, and thus more dangerous, or about the same?
Well, there's debate about how strong his control over power is, how stable the regime is. I think he's firmly in control. I think he's gained absolute control of the party, the military, and the government. The regime is stable. That's not to say it's a good regime. But we know a lot less about Kim Jong-un than his father and his grandfather. And we're concerned that perhaps he doesn't understand the concept of red lines, that he may go beyond what his father and grandfather might do. Last April, when tensions were high, there was a great deal of nervousness in Washington and Seoul because we didn't know how he would respond. Would he go ahead with a tactical military attack? And right now it's far more likely that South Korea would retaliate to that. And then you have the danger of an escalation of even greater military conflict on the peninsula.
I think what everybody wants is the real smoking gun. You know, really to figure out the connective tissue of whether or not North Korea was responsible for this. Bruce, do you think we'll get that? Do you think we'll get the smoking gun proof at some point?
I think with cyber attacks, very rarely can you get a smoking gun. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have the FBI statement, and people are criticizing it. Some are not convinced. But, you know, I know from previous times when the intelligence community would make an assertion, there is so much more evidence that can't be shared with the public in order to protect sources and methods.
Bruce Klingner. Bruce, great to have you on today. Thanks so much. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And we will all find out maybe next season on Homeland how this all happened.
Or maybe we'll see the interview, because Sony still wants to release it. Apparently.
I know, they do. They do. Art house
it'll get released one way or another.
Somehow we'll all see it, but
online.
I want to know how this all happened, though. All right, so coming up, we finally have the chance to say the phrase humanitarian insemination. I've said it 3 times this morning. I haven't. It's only 6:49. That story's next.